Welcome back to another Drawing in the Dark. My name is Levi Smith. I draw and tattoo for a living, and today we're going to be working on something a little different. Today's video is about a video game that was made by a young man named Jackson Ross, who at 14 built this side-scrolling action video game, which was his third game that he produced over about 4 months, including the music, everything, all the animation, all the sprite animation, and it's pretty cool. So it's called The Great Treasure Quest, and it's starring this main character here, Greg the Goblin, who's been recruited by the Goblin King to do the Great Treasure Quest. As usual, I start off very light here with my ballpoint pen, just kind of sketching in a few different general elements, get the composition worked out here for the piece. And then I move into working on Greg here, the Goblin, and just kind of building out a general positioning shape, composing the body, trying to figure out how exactly. I do want to point out while I'm drawing this here, I'm overlaying a lot of the video game music that Jackson had created for this game. Some pretty good stuff. I might have to hit him up for some theme music. And don't forget to check the description for links on Jackson's game, The Great Treasure Quest. And of course, I continue on here with just working out various elements. As always, starting off with the most basic kind of shapes that I can as I decide where everything goes and then how I want to clarify and represent all that. So we're still working here on Greg, kind of messing around with some details and stuff, slowly building up all the elements. He has floating hands and feet, and I really stuck to that in this. And so I think that that's just an element that, while it originally may have made like animating the character and building the sprites a lot easier, I really think it's an interesting touch for the character himself to give him a little bit of a creative edge. And then I start working into the robot I'm going to have him face off. I want the robot to feel bigger than Greg, even though I'm drawing him in the background. So I kind of put him a bit in the distance. That also helps separate some of these elements, especially with how close they're getting together and stuff. So trying to keep this robot here based off of one of Jackson's early drawings in the background so that his impact is not too overwhelming, but not insignificant. So then, as usual, I continue to build up and darken the line work and stuff, especially as I get more comfortable with where things are actually going to end up. And then once I've got the characters established a bit better here, I move into the background, working on a few elements that I had seen from the promo videos that I showed you earlier, and just trying to capture one of the base levels, the wild wilderness here. So again, just working out general rough shapes, playing around with some simple staging here. I don't necessarily want to make this overly complicated or so that it ends up taking me like way too much time in the rendering process here. So just working all that stuff out, jumping back into some other details, and just trying to push through the piece here. Links for Jackson's game are in the description, where you can check out more information and even play the game. As it moves along, again, I am boldening out a whole bunch of elements, starting to finalize some stuff here as far as some line thicknesses and finished kind of detail. Just getting things darkened up in the sketch so that the primary elements here are seen the way that they're intended. and lots more drawing. Draw, draw, draw. I think this piece overall took me about, I want to say like 4 or 5 hours. It's been a little while ago actually since I've drawn this piece. And between that and then getting to doing this audio, but yeah, sometimes it just works out that way. But yeah, I think I took about like 4 hours to draw this one, maybe closer to five, and over a number of days and sittings before I was able to get into any of the editing process. We're getting into some of the shading now, where I'm just going to scribble in with this ballpoint a bunch of hatching and shading, just to mostly separate a lot of the elements, build up some atmosphere, and give it that darker, more readable kind of look to it. I really do like this process for the fact that once everything is kind of worked out, this is where I feel like I get to play in the drawing a little bit more with working on the lighting, working on depth of field effects, separating elements from the foreground and background and stuff. And yeah, it can be a lot of fun. I'll give you a little bit of a view here of some real time movement, just so that you can see that thing, that I really don't draw lightning fast, right? And then back into the high speed time elapse kind of stuff, because watching this stuff at actual speed can be can be a little boring. So I'm just trucking through a lot of these elements in here, shading in some bricks and some background. Also trying to make sure that I give what I'm drawing time to dry, because this big pen can it it can still be wet, and so you have to pay attention to where you're laying down really heavy inks and not running my hand through them as I draw. So in that way, I usually always start with like the heavy shading and stuff like this in the top left of the piece, and then work my way kind of out and down towards the bottom right of the paper. That way my hand is always moving away from the areas that I've put into a lot of heavy shading and stuff. And yeah, it takes a while. It takes hours to shade. This ends up being one of the more labor intensive parts of doing a pen sketch like this. It's trying to build up a lot of shading and effect to it overall, where it's just where most of the ink gets laid down. And so yeah, this ends up being the most significant stage, where really the foundations are more important. This is where the labor happens. So if you don't have foundations to your drawing that you don't necessarily like, I wouldn't even bother getting into this part of the process until you really do have those foundations worked out, your composition, your anatomy, your poses, all of that stuff. You want to have all of that figured out in a drawing before you get into doing any kind of like final heavy inking, line work, shading, stuff like that. And as I've said in previous videos, there really isn't anything special as far as materials or tools here. This is literally just an old big ballpoint pen, a basic sketchbook. I use these Illo 8x8 sketchbooks. They're pretty nice. I like how they're square formatted. That ends up working out pretty fun for me, especially for doing stuff like this. And yeah, but it's not too important. I mean, some computer paper, printer paper, notebook paper, whatever ballpoint pen or pencil you can get your hands on. That's really where the drawing starts. Not necessarily being concerned over high quality tools, special papers, anything like that. you're not even really going to want to get into that stuff until you've developed more skills and have a need for like archival quality kind of materials. All right, and as you see, I have really turned up the dial on this time elapse here, just kind of cooking through all of this various shading and elements, zooming out a little bit here so you can still see what's going on, but also get a nice impression as to how things are taking shape. One of the things that you might notice too with this amount of detail is like the character can really kind of get lost into the surrounding background elements. So maybe like a thicker line or some actual like gray marker shading or just some color or something like that can really help build up and separate these elements, which I do add in even heavier, darker line, and you can see the effect that that ends up having here. Just in an immediate sense. A little bit of other shading, marker work, actually would turn out really nice for this. I wish I knew what this robot guy's name was. He's pretty cool. I had a lot of fun with him, especially just working out these basic shapes that kind of allow me to play around with some texture, volume, stuff like that, that I just had a lot of fun with that guy. And then heavy shading into some of these palm trees, especially behind the robot, just to kind of push him out a little bit, put something behind him as well. And that is getting close to about it here. If you want to check out Jackson's game, it is called The Great Treasure Quest. The links are in the description for where you can actually find it and play it. It's a real game that is available. And thanks for watching and getting to the end here. Don't forget to drop a like and a subscribe, and follow us for more content like this in the future. Later. And follow us for more